Hello everyone, today we are exploring one of the most influential debates in game studies, the clash between ludology and narratology. Whether you're a game designer, a student of digital culture, or just a curious gamer, understanding this debate is key to unlocking how games are made, experienced, and studied. We'll examine what each side argues, hear directly from leading scholars, and discuss how these ideas continue shaping academic thought and game design. Also, we will explore the origins, key ideas, and impact of the ludology versus narratology debate. This discussion has influenced how we study games and design them today. We will break down what each side means, review some main arguments, and see how this debate still resonates in modern game development. In this video, we are asking a foundational question: how should we study games? On the one hand, we have ludologists who argue that the essence of a game is found in its rules, systems, and interactive experience. On the other hand, narratologists claim that the narrative, the characters, plot, and the story structure is essential to understanding what games truly are. Before we dive in, please subscribe and like this video if you enjoy deep dives into game theory and design. Let's begin by defining our two key terms, ludology and narratology. Ludology comes from the Latin word ludus, meaning play, and refers to the study of games with a focus on their systems, mechanics, and rules. In short, ludologists argue that games fundamentally differ from other narrative media because their play structures define them. They see a game's core as a system of rules and the experience that emerge from interacting with those rules. This notion of effort and active engagement is central to the ludological perspective. For ludologists, a game's value comes from its mechanics, how a game system operates independently of a prescripted story. Think about games like Tetris or Pac-Man. There is no unfolding narrative, yet the gameplay itself creates rich, emergent experiences. On the other side, we have narratology, the study of narrative and storytelling. Narratologists in game studies view video games as narrative media. They emphasize plot, character development, and storytelling techniques, arguing that games can tell stories as powerful as books or films, even if the medium requires interactivity. This perspective suggests that the narrative, how the story is crafted, and how players interact with the story is just as vital as the rules of the game. Many role-playing games and interactive adventures rely on storytelling to deliver emotional depth and immersive experience. While both approaches analyze games, they do so from different angles. Ludologists examine games' rules, strategies, and interactivity, whereas narratologists focus on the story elements and how narratives are constructed in interactive spaces. Now that we understand the basic definitions, let's travel back to the early 2000s to see how this debate emerged. The roots of the ludology versus narratology debate trace back to the early 2000s, a period marked by rapid technological change and a surge in digital game production. As games become more complex and culturally significant, scholars sought new ways to understand them. This led to a lively debate: are games best understood as systems of rules and interactions, or do they derive their meaning from the narrative and storytelling? On the ludology side, Espen Aarseth's cybertext was groundbreaking in this respect. Aarseth's work introduced the idea that playing a game is not a passive experience. Rather, it requires a player's active engagement to traverse the text, a concept that mirrors the challenges of interpreting a complex work of literature. Aarseth derives the term cybertext from Norbert Wiener's explanation of cybernetics, a system based on a control mechanism, feedback loops, and flow of information. So Aarseth sees games as cybernetic systems, summarizing his perspective. These early debates set the stage for an ongoing conversation in both academia and the game industry about what makes games unique. For ludologists, it isn't just about the narrative. The rules, emergent gameplay, and player interactions are central. Meanwhile, narratologists quickly pointed out that games often include deeply engaging stories. They argued that narrative elements like character arcs, plot twists, and dramatic tensions are integral to many successful games. Even early narrative-driven games showcased how interactivity could coexist with storytelling. As Janet Murray argues in Hamlet on the Holiday, she says that computer games offer an interactive narrative space where we can actively explore the story, choosing and changing perspectives as we see fit. Such arguments challenge traditional narrative-centric approaches, suggesting that games needed their analytical tools, which focused on interactivity and emergent play. This intellectual crossfire set the stage for decades of debate, which each camp contributing valuable insights into what makes games an art form unlike any other. Consider a simple example: chess. Ludologists argued that the game isn't about the story of the pieces, but strategic interplay of rules, moves, and countermoves, while narratologists saw the game chess as a battle of two kingdoms. This debate wasn't just academic, it had real implications for how games were designed, analyzed, and even marketed. This historical context not only illustrates the evolution of game studies but also underscores the ongoing relevance of these debates as games evolve. Now, let's take a closer look at the ludological perspective. For proponents of ludology, the core of any game is the system of rules and the interactive dynamics those rules create. They contend that while games might include narrative elements, these are secondary to the primary experience, playing the game. Ludologists also emphasize the concept of emergent gameplay, situations where complex experiences arise from simple rule interactions. This concept is key to understanding why some games are celebrated not for their narrative, but for the intricate systems that allow for unexpected and innovative player behavior. As Gonzalo Frasca puts in his 2003 paper, he says that if we only study games by their narratives, we risk missing the unique qualities that set them apart from other media. This focus on systems leads ludologists to examine how minimal sets of rules can generate complex, unpredictable outcomes. They point to simple examples like sandbox games, think Minecraft or Dwarf Fortress, where the simplicity of the rules gives rise to infinitely varied player experiences. Every session is different because players interact with the system in unique ways. Ludologists also warn against narrativizing games, forcing them into narrative frameworks that might obscure their interactive qualities. They argue that doing so risks reducing the player's rich dynamic experience to a static story by emphasizing system and interactivity. Ludologists advocate for a language and methodology that honors the distinctiveness of games as a medium. By focusing on the play, the strategy, and the emergent systems, ludologists aim to build a vocabulary that respects the distinctiveness of video games as a medium. It's a call to develop theories that do justice to what makes gaming fun, challenging, and in many cases revolutionary. This chapter of our discussion reminds us that, for many, the magic of gaming lies not in the pre-written story but in the challenge, creativity, and emergent behavior that come from interacting with a well-designed system. Next, we will look at the narrative side of the debate, narratology, and see how those scholars argue for the importance of storytelling in games. Narratologists argue that the narrative elements in games are complementary and fundamental. Games tell stories, characters develop, and plots evolve, even in interactive environments. In many games, narrative isn't just an add-on, it's woven into the fabric of the experience. Consider role-playing or adventure games where the player's choice directly influences the storyline. Here, the narrative isn't static, it evolves with every decision, offering multiple layers of meaning and emotional depth. This view posits that the interactive nature of games allows players to be co-authors of the narrative, actively shaping the story as they play. Many games are designed with the story at their core. Consider role-playing games like The Witcher or Mass Effect, where player choices actively shape the narrative. In these experiences, the game is not just a set of rules, it is an evolving story that adapts to the player's decisions. This interactivity creates a unique form of storytelling where the player becomes a co-author of the narrative. Narratologists argue that the video games have the potential to do what the traditional media can't, allowing the players to become a part of the story. This interactivity can create a more immersive and personalized narrative experience. In this view, understanding a game fully means analyzing how its story is constructed and how the narrative interacts with gameplay. Critics of the strict ludological view points out that many of the most beloved games are celebrated for their mechanics and storytelling. They highlight how narrative drives emotional engagement, creating memorable experiences beyond the sum of their parts. Key figures on the narratology side have emphasized the importance of contextual, cultural, and historical narratives within games. They suggest that analyzing these stories helps us understanding how games reflect, challenge, and even reshape our understanding of the world. Narratologists analyze how plot, character development, and setting combine to create an immersive experience. They explore questions like how do branching narratives affect player agency? How can a game's world and lore deepen emotional engagement? By applying literary and film theory methods, narratologists reveal that the interplay between story and gameplay is essential to understanding a game's full impact. While narratologists acknowledge that the game mechanics are essential, they argue that the narrative components deserves equal attention, because ultimately it is the story that can transform a series of mechanics into a meaningful experience. This approach invites us to see games as more than just a collection of mechanics. They are dynamic, living stories that invite us to explore, question, and even shape the narrative world. So, where do these two approaches clash? The fundamental conflict lies in what we consider the essence of a game. Ludologists worry that overemphasizing narrative reduces the game to a form of literature or cinema, neglecting the unique, rule-based, interactive experiences that defines play. Meanwhile, narratologists caution that ignoring narrative overlooks the power of storytelling, a key component that shapes player engagement. As Marie-Laure Ryan explained the conflict from another perspective in her book Narrative as Virtual Reality, as games rules must be followed strictly. At the same time, the modern literature encourages creativity and the transgression of its conventions. This tension has sparked intense debate. However, in recent years, many scholars and designers have moved towards a synthesis, recognizing that narrative and gameplay systems are crucial for fully understanding video games. In other words, why must we choose one over the other when many games thrive on a synthesis of both? On this point, Henry Jenkins came up with his work and pointed out that not every game tells stories, but many games have a narrative aim. The narrative analysis shouldn't be prescriptive. The playing experience cannot be reduced to simply narrative, and games tell stories differently than the other forms of media does. Games like The Last of Us and Red Dead Redemption serve as prime examples, where robust mechanics work in harmony with deeply engaging stories to create experiences that are both challenging and emotionally resonant. Today, rather than pitting ludology against narratology, many in the field advocate for an integrated approach. By appreciating the interplay between game system and its story, we gain a fuller understanding of how games works and why they captivate us. This synthesis isn't without its challenges, but it offers a more nuanced framework for analyzing games. It invites us to see games as unique artifacts where mechanics and narratives inform and enhance one another. And that makes the game a unique form of media where developing a game requires expertise in all areas with multidisciplinary teams. The debate between ludology and narratology has significantly influenced academic research and practical game design. Today, many university programs incorporate courses that explore both theoretical frameworks, providing future game designers with a balanced understanding of mechanics and storytelling. Designers are increasingly aware that to create truly immersive experiences, they must consider how a game plays and the narrative context that give it meaning. Scholars continue to develop models that integrate gameplay analysis with narrative theory. In the industry, designers are increasingly aware of how storytelling and mechanics can complement each other, crafting experiences that are both engaging and emotionally resonant. By understanding this debate, we appreciate the complexity of video games as an art form and gain insight into how designers can craft more engaging, immersive experiences. Whether you're an academic, a game designer, or just a curious player, understanding this debate enriches your perspective on what games are and what they can become. To sum up, The ludology versus narratology debate isn't about choosing one approach over the other. It is about recognizing that the both rules and the stories in games play a vital role. Games are unique mediums where systems and stories intertwine to create experiences greater than the sum of their parts. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more insights into game studies and design. I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you lean more towards ludology, narratology, or a bit of both? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.